Modern life can be stressful, especially if you're African American. One would have to navigate institutional racism and discrimination, along with other outside stressors related to historic and modern prejudice. In order to navigate these stressors and to achieve a positive outcome in life, one would need to build something called resilience. Resilience is a psychological construct that in layman terms means how well someone can react to stressors or negative things that happens in their life, usually by developing coping mechanisms. There are different kinds of positive and negative coping mechanisms that can be constructive or destructive in an individual's life. Because of how stressful life can be, it is important to try and develop resiliency in people as best we can, especially for people of color, who must deal with more stressors than their European American counterparts. One idea on how to better the development of resiliency in individuals is to give people a creative and constructive outlet that will allow them to address and cope with stressors in their life. The example that I want to use of the affirmation building of constructive outlets as a coping mechanism comes from Season 1, Episode 12 of Aaron McGruder's hit TV series The Boondocks, titled Riley Was Here. In this video, I'm going to look at how resiliency can be seen being built into Riley's character throughout the episode and how that can be translated into real-life communities. First, let's look at a summary of the episode. The episode starts with Riley Freeman tagging a house when an art teacher, who is a not-so-subtle nod to Bob Ross, walks by and starts to critique Riley's graffiti and coach Riley on how he could make a tag look better. After Riley is caught and the authorities get involved, he is forced to clean up the previous graffiti and to take art lessons from the art teacher who managed to not get caught. Despite the intended function of the art lessons to be a form of punishment, the art teacher does not require Riley to stay for the full time, but instead requires him to do one drawing per day, which the art teacher will critique in a Bob Ross fashion. Riley is reluctant at first, and draws up a quick sketch so that he can leave, but is offended when the art teacher is critical of Riley's drawing and throws it away. Riley then copies a picture that the art teacher drew to try and prove to the art teacher that he is good at drawing. But the art teacher is critical that the picture Riley drew was not his own creation. Once Riley starts to put effort into his own art, the art teacher recommends that they go back out and paint murals on people's houses. In other words, tagging houses. The art teacher encourages Riley to paint things that will defy expectations, which he does. Riley's final piece of the episode is a mural of his parents, who are absent in the entire series as he lives with his grandfather. So, I'm sure after hearing a summary of the episode, you're asking how the psychological construct of resilience plays a part in this episode. Resilience is not the main focus of the episode. You can actually see the formation of coping mechanisms and how through art, Riley is able to confront the emotions that are not normally depicted in his character. There are other people who can explain what every character in the Boondocks is supposed to represent way better than me, but I'll give it a go. Aaron McGruder himself stated that Riley Freeman's character is supposed to represent African American youths who idealize black pop culture, which is filled with images of violence and the glorification of crime, and how silly these idealizations are. Now in this episode, we can see this manifesting as tagging houses, but I think that Riley tagging houses goes deeper than trying to copy some pop culture. Throughout the episode, the art teacher is highly critical of Riley's art and stresses that Riley should draw something that represents him or represents something that he feels deep emotion about. In this way, we see how art becomes a coping mechanism for Riley as his final art piece is a painting of his parents, who are heavily implied to be dead by the episode. We can see how using art as a coping mechanism is affecting Riley's character within the episode, as it can be perceived that Riley has been using black pop culture as his current coping mechanism to deal with stressors like the death of his parents. But art becomes another avenue for him to express his inner emotions about the subject. We not only see how having art as a coping mechanism changes Riley's character by viewing Riley's actions, this change is also accentuated in how Riley interacts with other characters in the show. The B plot of the episode has Huey Freeman, who is usually the voice of reason in the show, conducting an experiment to see how much black reality television he can consume till it is harmful. One of the running jokes of the series is how bad the stuff on BET is for the populace. We only see one interaction between mid-experiment Huey and mid-episode Riley. But in that one instance, we see Riley start to become dismissive of Huey, who is starting to exhibit characteristics that are not in line with his previous characterization before the experiment. For the first time, we see Riley Freeman break away from what his character is supposed to represent, and we see how taking art lessons and the art that he is creating has a positive effect on Riley's mental health and how he interacts with the world around him. Due to the episodic nature of the Boondocks, by the end of the episode, Riley goes back to being the youth that idealizes black pop culture, so his character can represent that in later episodes. In the context of the show, simply having the art teacher show Riley that art could be more than tagging his name on houses, but instead could be an outlet to let out deep emotions he feels, does wonder to flesh out his character. In the larger picture, we can get a better understanding of how to build resiliency for people of color. While resiliency as a concept is recognized in the media and the African American community, I don't think the media does a great job of explaining the concept academically to people in a way that can be actively used by communities of color. At the end of the day, due to stressors of discrimination, prejudice, and institutional racism, every person of color has to build some kind of resilience in their everyday lives. But to what extent can people deal with these stressors varies. What happens when the stressors become so big and so many that they outweigh a person's ability to cope? How do we build someone's resiliency up so that they can continue to overcome stressors in their life? Based on this episode of the Boondocks, it would appear as if Aaron McGruder's answer is to create constructive outlets as a coping mechanism. I tend to agree with McGruder's analysis and would love to see studies done in the same vein as to find out the best way to build resilience. What are your thoughts about resiliency or my analysis as a whole and how it manifests in the Boondocks? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, I'm Tyree Byrd, and thanks for watching.